You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national covering down on all the issues. And, oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just all in right now on a Monday afternoon. We like to call it a Meatloaf Monday around here because it's always about food. So hit me some meatloaf.
I think I'll try the meatloaf sandwich.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, meatloaf.
What is it? I'm only asking in case I have to describe it later to a doctor.
Look, it's nutritious. It's delicious.
Made out of meat. Add ketchup if you want. I couldn't
care less. I'll tell you what, though. We went to a big old Easter brunch right now. I'm not sure I can even talk about food. Good heavens. JP's on the board. Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm great. And, yeah, I also had a big food-filled Easter, per usual.
Food-filled Easter.
Yeah.
Well.
But then also having to mow the grass because I went back home. So, of course, and then having to mount a TV, all the big projects my mom decided to say.
Yeah, they're like, when's Justin coming home?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mine was filled with pine straw.
Yeah.
All the beds look wonderful now. Bushes are trimmed. Everything's just perfect, and the pine straws are now perfectly laid. And it just about broke me as a man. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. Anyway, we got it all done, but it was also a great weekend to worship, spend time remembering the purpose of the weekend. I hope you guys had a great one, good time with family and remembrance and celebration. In the meantime, we got a great show laid on for you. No guest today, and that's intentional. I wanted time to unpack some stuff. So I've got, and I may call an audible on my order here, but right now I've got Deportation, Jackassery as the very first one. Deportation, Jackassery. Look, the fact that we've got decisions still being made that literally impede the ability of the executive branch to just be the executive branch when these same impediments were never put in front of other administrations is just absolute jackassery. I'll tell you all about it as number one in the Triple Dipper. Number two.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah, what?
I forgot to do this.
I have a Triple Dipper.
Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
I'm telling you, I ate too much food this weekend.
I had to save you from deducting points from John. So
okay. John, give JP my points. He just saved me. All right, so now that I've already done that, I'm on number 2 with the Triple Dipper. Semper Fi is number 2, and I may bring it to number 1 because it really ties in with my monologue. But Semper Fi, and what I'm saying there is an always faithful. There is something to be said about taking care of veterans, and there is something to be said about the fact that we have seen a massive increase in enlistments. I think there's a call to duty right now that is at a level we haven't seen in years, and I'll tell you more about that as number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, protecting kids. Look, y'all, that's our most precious resource. There is no other resource greater than our children, and as individuals and as a nation. And we are seeing efforts by the left right now, and it's not just the left, really, it's like the immoral, I guess you would say. They're trying to reach our kids. And I'm going to tell you right now, our job is to protect them. And I'm going to tell you about some ways that are being put in place, things that are being put in place to try and make that happen. All right. That's protecting kids, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into today's opening monologue. And I will remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald is indeed the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. He's a longtime attorney and partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville. Stan McDonald, I'll tell you more about him here momentarily. So let me just say, I really do believe that we are in a fight right now. It's a fight worth having, too, by the way. It's a fight that will determine what kind of America we actually want. I mean, do we want an America that will just go along to get along? Standing for everything and therefore standing for nothing? Because that's the hinge point that we're standing at. We are at an inflection, a turning, a fork in the proverbial road. I mean, what kind of America do we want? Andrew Jackson, who rallied up a ragtag group of militia, buccaneers, and townsfolk To defend New Orleans near the end of the War of 1812, he soundly defeated a far superior British force. He is quoted as having said this. It's a very cool quote. He said, "Who are we? And for what are we going to fight? Are we the titled slaves of George III, the military conscripts of Napoleon the Great, or the frozen peasants of the Russian Tsar? No." He said, "We are the freeborn sons of America, the citizens of the only republic now existing in the world, and the only people on earth who possess rights, liberty, and property which they dare call their own." Look, his words and his actions in that campaign fired up a nation and propelled him to the presidency. So sometimes it's a common man who rises up. Other times it's a leader who speaks over the fears of his people to provide reassurance and inspire confidence. But that kind of leadership, that kind of speaking to the moment, it can be contagious. Isn't it amazing how one person can say or do just the right thing and turn a tide of depression into an inspiring moment, even an inspiring movement? Well, I heard a story yesterday that inspired me in that vein. A story I'd never heard before. A story that made my 60-year-old self stand up a little straighter. It made my crickety neck and old muscles feel like they could still do a little bit more than I already push them to do. Like maybe my calloused former paratrooper hands could actually do more stuff. Because the story is about an old soldier who saw a fight worth having, despite his age. So I saw a meme one time and it said, "Fear the old man who survives in a young man's world." Well, that could never be more true than the story of a guy named Samuel Whittemore. There's a marker to Samuel Whittemore in Arlington, Massachusetts. It doesn't give you the whole story, but it does tell you something about the man who became known as the oldest colonial fighter in the American Revolutionary War. You see, Whittemore was born in 1696. 1696. And if you're quick with math, you're already figuring out that he was an old guy by the time the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. He was also a fighter. Over the years, Samuel Whittemore had fought in various small conflicts and the French and Indian War, but he was a colonial. He was not a loyalist to the crown. And on April 19th of 1775, at 78 years old, Whittemore was out working in his fields. By the way, let that sink in. At 78 years old, he was out working in his fields. But Whittemore, while he was out in the fields, saw British forces returning to Boston from the battles of Lexington and Concord. Whittemore, the old guy, he loaded his musket and 2 black powder dueling pistols. He took up a position behind a stone wall. An account of the day said that Whittemore yelled to other colonials that, "If I can only be the instrument of killing one of my country's foes, I shall die in peace." He confronted the British soldiers. He fired his first shot and he killed 1 British soldier. He then drew his 2 pistols and he killed 2 more. But he wasn't done. He was danger close and he had no time to reload. So Samuel Whittemore, at 78 years old, drew his sword and attacked the British troops. He was shot in the face, he was bayoneted several times, and he was left for dead. Colonial forces later found him still conscious and bloodied, trying to load his own musket to go back for more. His clothes were full of bullet holes and stab wounds. And the wounds were so severe, Whittemore was not expected to survive. But that old guy, Samuel Whittemore, was as hard as woodpecker lips, man. At a time and a place when the average life expectancy for men in the American colonies was just 38 years, the 78-year-old warrior survived his wounds and lived for nearly 2 more decades to the ripe old age of 96. 96 in the 1700s. The New London Journal, back at the time, reported on his death in 1793, and it said this of him. It said, quote, "He survived to see the complete overthrow of his enemies and his country enjoy all the blessings of peace and independence." What an epic story. Why have I not heard about him before? But what I do know is that even with his extreme story being so epic in its scale, what we saw there was one old guy who saw something still worth fighting for. He saw more than just his personal stake, too, in the events of the day. He saw something far greater, so great that he was willing to stand alone at great cost and give all that he had to fix the world that he lived in. He was born in 1696, and he fought in every war, every skirmish, every fight for the next 100 years to shape the beginnings of his country. What an amazing story. I hope that I can have a eulogy half as strong as his. But listen, the physical fight that Samuel Whittemore put up for the ability for us to see a nation free and prosperous is still ongoing. And it may not be a physical fight, but it is still a fight nonetheless, and it requires that Americans step into the fray. You see, folks, there is still a battle for our society. It's a battle of good against evil. It's a left against right. It's freedom versus slavery in the spiritual and the moral sense. The left does not want us to be united, but like my lovely Charlene always says, there's more of us than there are them. In a recent writing by a pastor that I follow, he got very candid. He said this, and it's a long quote, but I'm going to read it to you. He said, quote, "We are in a winner-take-all spiritual war for the soul of America. The left certainly knows this and has pulled out all the stops. They no longer even attempt to masquerade their attempts at taking over. Winning by persuasion and numbers is no longer their plan. They intend to take over by force, laws, and intimidation. In their demented minds, parents no longer have the right to control the education of their children. Kindergartners are supposed to be indoctrinated regarding sexual preferences. The fruit of allowing humanistic ideals," he said, "to control our nation is now in complete manifestation. Truth no longer matters. Lying to advance their agenda is perfectly acceptable. The average American, even those who do not profess to be Christians, shake their heads in wonder, asking, how did we get to this insane point?" Look, I would add this. I would add that they will attempt to win, the left will, by dividing society into sections and then allowing some to intersect while putting the brakes on others. So what do we do about it? What can a right-side ruffian do or say or commit to that will preserve who we are as a people? Not divided, but equally sharing in this great and wonderful liberty that the founders felt inspired to put in place for all generations, without questions of division. We must be prepared and committed and ready to stand. As surely as Samuel Whittemore took his stand by the stone wall, we have to do the same. And it may be a moral and a principled fight, but it is a fight nonetheless. General George Patton, he once told his men, "You must acquire the warrior's soul." In another one of his quotes, a little bit longer, he said this very strongly. He said, "There are 3 ways that men get what they want: by planning, by working, and by praying. Any great military operation takes careful planning or thinking, and then you must have well-trained troops to carry it all out. That's the working," said Patton. "But between the plan and the operation, there's always an unknown. That unknown spells defeat or victory, success or failure. It's the reaction of the actors to the ordeal when it actually comes, and some people call that getting the breaks. Patton said, I call it God. God has his part or margin in everything, and that's where prayer comes in." Yeah, so here's the thing, y'all. What I'm seeing there is a trend. What I'm seeing there is a moment. Samuel Whittemore didn't just step out there and have a physical fight. It was the words that he used to rally the people that caused so much inspiration. We have to speak into our moments. We have to be willing to realize that words of encouragement and motivation and resistance, that those words are actually necessary. There has never been a time in the human race when the right words said at the right time by the right person didn't also generate the right results. Sure, there's a time for silence at times, a time for grieving quietly, but when the grieving is done and the mission still remains, that's when you got to ranger up. That's when you got to have those people around you who, if you're not able to find the words yourself, will also speak into your moment and move you back into action. Call it a kick in the pants. Call it a reason to exist. Call it a call to action. Call it whatever. Words matter. And I'm thankful for those who have timely added something to my days that got me out of my funk at times and back on my feet and leaning forward in my foxhole. Well, here at Rightside Media, we're committed to the idea that made this state and this nation great. We live in a nation whose very motto is the Latin phrase, Iudimus jura nostra defendere. That's a state, by the way, that's a state motto that says we dare defend our rights. We are a state that is one part of a vast nation whose motto is also e pluribus unum, which means out of many come one. And every single day I get ready for this show, my goal is to educate, enlighten, empower, and entertain you on the principles that make us a liberty-minded community. To give you that added bit of knowledge that you are not alone in the fight, that it's okay to say things like Jesus is Lord and America's great and life's worth living. That's what I do, and that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do for you. This is a fight worth having. It absolutely is. It's a fight that we're in together. And yes, there are more of us than there are of them. So get in the fight. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. There you have it. I'm just telling you, we got some good stuff out there, but it's a fight, y'all. It may not be a physical fight with guns and knives, but nonetheless, Samuel Whittemore showed us that sometimes it's much an attitude as anything. Sometimes it's a matter of just getting out there, being hard as woodpecker lips, doing the things that are necessary in a fight worth having. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Got a quick tell you about attorney Stan McDonald. Yep, he's indeed the sponsor of the daily Rightside Way monologue. Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. I know him personally. I can tell you right now that not only is Stan the kind of guy who will advocate quite well for your legal needs, but listen, Stan McDonald has been in the fray, in the trenches, in the mix for like decades on all the politics and policies and cares that we Rightside ruffians are all about. I mean, he's an OG ruffian from way back. So yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, he's represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to represent you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald is on your side, you will have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So you may want to know how to reach him, right? You need an attorney in North Alabama. I'm going to give you his phone number. Stan McDonald. Law firm is Wilmer and Lee. And the number is 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, Wilmer and Lee, 256-479-3020. I would appreciate if you tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. Oh, yeah. No representation made. The quality legal service be informed is great. The quality legal service for all the lawyers.
Man, you're getting good at this one.
Bam!
I give that like a 9.4.
Wow. Consistently in the 9s.
You're going to hit a 10 one day.
I'm not sure what it takes to have a 10.
I'll know it when I hear it.
Okay. Nice. All right. So I happen to know that you are somewhat of a historian. Mm-hmm. I think you told me once that 1776 is one of your favorite books, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a great. I mean, I'd say the Revolutionary War is one of my favorite time periods of history. George Washington is my favorite historical figure, so they kind of go hand in hand.
Have you ever heard of the story of Samuel Whittemore that I just told a moment ago?
I had not.
I hadn't.
Until this weekend where I saw it on Twitter, somebody talking about the story. I think it's how you found it, too.
Yeah, I did.
I hadn't heard that before, no.
It's amazing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's just a crusty old dude. And just, I'd love to see what he looked like, too. But I imagine him being like just kind of chiseled and hard.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
just
like a man's
lean.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kind of guy who will tell you real quick what he thinks and expect you to understand it the way he sees it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Several text messages in there. John from Huntsville, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, did you hear that a Delta jet burst into flames at a Florida airport? I did not. I'll check it out. Said, by the way, JP, did you see your Atlanta Braves sweep the Minnesota Twins?
They did. 3's a streak, baby. Our first streak of the year.
3's a streak.
Yes, we go. We're back.
Okay, all it takes is 3, and we're back. All right. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. More text messages and lots of stuff. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down to some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all are talking about this show. Whew. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I am talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border into what we now recall Fort Benning. And then, oh, by the way, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Looking at a few text messages that have come in, Roughly Ann from Huntsville says, wow, 1696, tough as woodpecker lips, and she's got, she liked yeah. Yep, he was, oh man, as hard as woodpecker lips. Allie from Athens says, Colonel Old Man Strength, there's always a time to mount up, sir. Yes, indeed, there is. Thank you, Allie. So I remember I found a meme. It's had a picture of an old grizzled face, and it says "Old Man Fight Club." I like it. but then I also saw another meme, and it had this old grizzled. You could tell he's like a special forces guy with the gray beard, with his M4 slung across the front, and it just said, "Fear the old man who survives in a young man's world." But yeah, Samuel Whittemore. Dang, what a story. Richard from Madison says, wow, Colonel Williams, only one word comes to mind, charge. There you go, sir. And then Kennan from Huntsville says, best history book I've ever read is The Tennessee, 2-volume set by Donald Davidson. Okay, I'll check that out. Interesting. Okay, listen, I gotta address something that's not part of my dippers, but after I prepared the show this morning, I realized we had massive news in that the Pope has died, and that's of course a huge deal. So to those of you that are Catholic out there, my condolences. But Pope Francis did pass away. Right now, they're revealing that the cause of death was a stroke. Of course, his health had been failing quite a bit here of late. The interesting dynamic is that Vice President J.D. Vance just visited him yesterday. So he dies the day after Easter, and on Easter, Vice President was there with him. And you got liberals that are like making something of that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, apparently J.D. Vance is the Antichrist.
Oh, my gosh. Whatever. Well, a lot of folks don't realize that this, by the Pope being out of place, there's no Pope. The Catholic Church worldwide is bigger than most governments of nations in terms of its scope, its reach, its level of administration, its assets. It's absolutely massive. And of course, Vatican City is like a nation unto itself. Very small, but still it's considered sovereign territory. And that dates back to the Middle Ages, I believe. Anyway, all that to say, this is a really, really, really big deal. And yes, Pope Francis, he had a legacy that was considered somewhat liberal. He was controversial for a number of reasons, but he was also the Pope and the head of the largest religious dynamic in the entire world, the Catholic Church worldwide. And so anyway, we'll see where this goes. I'm going to be interested to see, though, if there is a movement within the selection process to select someone who would be considered more conservative in their viewpoints.
So his name escapes me, but I saw a candidate earlier that some people, conservative Catholics, really want to be. He's a cardinal.
He's American.
Wanted to be promoted to the Pope because he's very much conservative in his views. And
he actually spoke against the Pope several times, if I'm not mistaken.
Obviously I'm not Catholic, so I don't have much of a say, but it would be nice if, the Pope is considered to be like one of the major Christian leaders of the world. It would be nice if they weren't pro-abortion, mass immigration against Israel. It'd be nice if they weren't. So.
Yeah, that would be true. And I also think that there is a trend right now worldwide in governance of every category. And the church is necessarily no different, doesn't have to be different, towards a more conservative view. There has been a movement to recognize that You don't have to condone everything. At the same time, that doesn't mean you're condemning by not condoning. So it's going to be very interesting to watch the selection. And by the way, I remember watching when Pope John Paul passed away, the coverage on TV of the selection process for a pope. There's a lot. It's very interesting how the different smoke comes out the chimney. Depending upon where they are. There's different colors of smoke that come out the chimney to tell people outside whether they've reached a conclusion. There's no phones. There's no communication within. And the only way the outside world knows what's going on is they watch for the smoke. I still think that's very interesting.
That is interesting.
And then when they make their selection, and I've forgotten which color's which, the different colored smoke goes out the chimney, and the world knows they're about to have the announcement of a new pope. So we'll see what happens. My hope, my prayer, is that we'll see a leader who truly leads and is scripturally sound and solid, and leans towards what I would call an absolute or absolutist view of Scripture, as opposed to one that is dynamic and fluid. I just hate to see the Christian faith watered down. Leadership matters. We'll watch what happens. Catholics, blessings on you. All right, there's a couple more text messages. Tony from Franklin, Tennessee says, "We are old for a reason, Colonel." That's right, because by God we survived. That's right.
Have you no scars?
Have you no scars? That's from our book.
Yeah.
JP and I are both in a study right now that J. Oswald Sanders wrote a book called Spiritual Leadership, and that's a great line. Have you no scars? Mm-hmm. I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker.
It's a great quote.
That's a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Old Man Fight Club. Have you no scars? Adam from Athens. Great monologue, Phil. I've never heard that story before, and I hope the next pope will bring God back to the Catholic Church. Anybody who supports abortions and condemns Israel for defending itself is not godly in my eyes. All right, Adam. Adam, I'd be curious. Are you Catholic yourself? I would love to know. Let me know. All right, that being said, y'all, we got plenty of stuff to talk about. Oh, wait, hang on. One more text. This one's to you. What's Lisa from Huntsville saying to you, JP?
She says, "Hey, JP, I had a professor at Alabama in the early 80s. His name was John S. Pancake. He was an expert on the Revolutionary War, and he wrote several books about it. I'm not sure if any of those books are still in print, but he was amazing in history, or an amazing history professor. He said she has one of those books called 1777, The Year of the Hangman. So it's very interesting. I had tremendous respect for him. He also had a wicked sense of humor. I think you would like his writings. Interesting.
Very cool. Thanks, Lisa. I tell you what, though, speaking of historians, I was at, where was I? Fort Dix, New Jersey, I believe, for part of my Command and General Staff College, my intermediate, call it ILE, Intermediate Leaders Education. And we had a weekend. And I didn't realize how many things were within driving distance of that area. Well, I had one of my professors. He said, "Hey, if anybody's interested, totally optional. But I'm pretty much a Civil War historian, and I'm going over to Gettysburg this weekend. If I want to go, I'll be glad to be your tour guide." And there's like 6 of us that went, "Oh, I'm in."
Yeah.
So we went. I have never had a tour guide in anything better than that. This guy was amazing. I mean, we would literally, we spent, I bet we spent 6 or 7 hours walking the battlefields, and he would stop under a tree and he'd go, "All right, right here next to this tree by that stone wall, so-and-so stood here and said this."
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, wow." And then you're starting to feel the history. And then we just covered all of the spots, and it was amazing.
A lot of people say Gettysburg is like one of the heaviest historical places, in the nation. I've heard a lot of people, I mean, obviously there's the haunted stories of Gettysburg, but I've seen a lot of people say they go to Gettysburg and you can almost feel like the gravity of the place.
That's some blood-soaked ground right there. Yeah. Pickett's charge, some blood-soaked ground. In fact, when I stood at the bottom of the hill and looked up at what the Pickett's charge, what the troops had to go up into the withering fire of the Union soldiers that were in defilade behind the stone walls at the top, I looked at it and thought, this was madness. Yeah. And it's a long way up that hill, too. David from Huntsville taking a little issue. He says, "I'm not sure what those commenters are talking about. Pope Francis was not pro-abortion." Okay. I thought I remembered him being very soft on the issue, but if that's not the case, then good. We can look it up.
Yeah, at least wasn't vocal against it, which I feel like the leader of the Catholic Church should be, but I digress.
Yeah. Jeremy from Madison is hitting us back on that comment a minute ago. That's a inside if you would go just reply to him with where to reach it. I see you already did, didn't you? Okay, great. And then Adam from Athens says, with regards to where are we? He's Catholic. Okay, he's not. He said, no, sir, I'm not. Just a humble servant of God. All right, good enough. All right, listen, we're going to kick off the first dipper here momentarily. I'm calling an audible, JP. I'm going straight into dipper number 2, Simplify. I feel like it ties in with the monologue a whole lot better. And then we'll do the Deportation Jackassery second. But if you didn't see it, I'll kick it off by saying this. In relation to my monologue, it fits quite well. So last week I made mention of the fact that Dakota Meyer, a Marine Corps veteran who received the Medal of Honor for his actions in Afghanistan in 2009. He was in, I believe, Kunar Province, Afghanistan. He just re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. He just had a 15-year break in service. 15-year break in service. Decided he was coming back. And it was a big deal. I mean, first of all, he's a Medal of Honor winner. I think he's one of only 2 Medal of Honor awardees who are still in uniform right now. They're not retired or deceased. Well, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is the one who actually administered the oath of enlistment and swore him in. And Meyer is now 36 years old. So, by the way, just saying, a 36-year-old sergeant is still fairly old by Army and Marine Corps standards. And he's not enlisting to be a poster boy. He's enlisting to go back into the ranks. He's going into the reserves, but I have a feeling he'll be doing a lot. This is what Pete Hegseth said. Think about what I just said about my monologue, Samuel Whittemore, a minute ago. Hegseth said this. He said, we're doing this, talking about the ceremony, as big as we can because I want the American people, I want your fellow Marines, and I want other service members to look at your example and know that you're never too old, you're never too experienced, and you're never done too much to contribute, and I salute you, said Hegseth. So when Meyer took the oath, he then gave his own commentary, and he did a subsequent interview in which he basically said, the same reason that I joined 20 years ago is the same reason I'm coming back in. I've got more to give. It's just an honor to be able to come stand shoulder to shoulder next to men and women who are still wearing the nation's cloth today. And he also went on to say at one point, there's never been a more important time than now to enlist and to be there to defend our nation against those that would try to tear it down. I agree with that. When I come back from the break, I'll tell you about some things that are being done right now for veterans. I'll tell you about some things that are being done to increase enlistments. And I'll tell you about the idea of basically building the force and also supporting the veterans as part of our Semper Fi Dipper. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. Man, this first hour is almost over. Goodness. All right, I'm in dipper number 1 right now, Semper Fi, always faithful. It's the motto of the Marine Corps, but I thought it was just fitting to make it the name of this dipper. But yeah, always faithful. And I think that's something that is... listen, I'll be honest with you. I think it's been missing. Not from the troops, although I think the troops have, a lot of the rank and file got very lackadaisical because they had no reason to do otherwise. Not everybody. And listen, that's not a broad blanket. I'm not going to just brush everybody with the same stroke here. But what I am saying is this, is leadership matters. And for the last several years, we have been in a place where the military was seen as, I keep calling it the petri dish for social experimentation, right? It was the place where, it's just that we have to have it, but let's go ahead and use it for things we like, not that we don't like. And so that's why we had a U.S. military, a Department of Defense annual report that came out every year for the last 4 years, naming climate change as one of the existential threats to our society, and the Department of Defense having a role in that. Climate change. The Department of Defense has nothing to do with the aspects of so-called climate change. It fights its wars whether it's raining or hot or cold or anything. Just listen, that's ridiculous. But what it did was it gave them the platform to be able to say, we're going to electrify all of the military vehicles, and we're going to electrify all of the buildings, and we're going to use solar power, and it got stupid. And then DEI kicks in, and then the softening of the standards, and then recruiting is way down, and it got gross. It just did. Well, it's not now. It's absolutely not. And by the way, you watch, liberals are starting to get their feet under them now. They're starting to find their moments. That's why this, and it's a different subject, but that's why this Abrego Garcia guy down in El Salvador right now, that's why it's such a thing, because they finally found something they can sink their teeth into. They think they have. And that's why you're starting to see more and more of lashing out, like Tesla's being set on fire. That's why you're starting to see courts getting involved in judges, federal district court judges ruling in a blanket fashion across the entire nation. But I say all that to say, as it relates to the Department of Defense, we have been in a place the last few years, I believe, where veterans were treated second fiddle. I do. I believe that. I say that as one. I say that as the son and grandson of one. And I believe also that the U.S. military was put in very awkward positions to have to do or put up with things it should never have to do or put up with, because that's not what it's designed for. It's almost like, and I can't tell you how many times I've done it. It's like going out in the garage, and you're going to hammer a nail, and you don't have your hammer with you, so you grab the back end of a screwdriver, you try to bang it. It's about as much sense as that. It's the wrong. You're trying to get your mission accomplished using the wrong tool. And that's what leftists do with the military all the time. And they abuse the funding of it, and they abuse the care of it, and they abuse the construct of it. You had leaders that were calling for DEI and then no accountability for the Afghanistan pullout. I could go on and on and on. But what I'm saying is, I feel like we're in a different place right now. And that's because I believe we're turning back to a mission-oriented military. A mission-oriented military that knows that its sole function in life is to build warriors who will support and defend the Constitution and who will defeat and deter our enemies on the field of battle. Or at the very least, stand so strong in their ranks that the enemy won't want to come across that line. That's what I feel like we're building again. We're returning common sense. Female soldiers should not have to worry about men sleeping in their barracks or taking showers in their shower rooms. You should not have to worry about who's in the foxhole next to you suddenly leaving because they decide to declare themselves transgender and they don't have to deploy for a year even though you do, because they're going through all their voluntary treatments. We should not have to worry about whether we've lost the idea of meritocracy and begun promoting people based upon their skin color. Like when the U.S. Navy said just a couple of years ago, we have too many white pilots, therefore we're looking for pilots of color. They said that. They said it because they felt empowered to be able to say it. And I think we're back to the point now that we're looking at, if you enlist in the U.S. military, you're enlisting for what the military is supposed to be about. And guess what? They're flocking back in. They are flocking back in to include Medal of Honor winner Dakota Meyer. So I say that Dakota Meyer, somebody said the other day, what does that really mean? I mean, he did his thing. No, I think he is endemic of a broader thing. I think Dakota Meyer's willingness to step into the ranks again as a Medal of Honor winner with a 15-year break in service is a clear indication that we're in a different time. I'll tell you more about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a Meatloaf Monday. I'm still full from yesterday. We went to brunch. There's a beautiful old place in downtown Anniston called Classic on Noble. And they had an amazing brunch that, like, I looked at it, I told Charlene at some point, I looked around at all the food laid out everywhere, and I said, the third world cannot contemplate this, and yet this is exactly what the third world thinks of America.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not kidding you when I say it was unbelievable, the amount of food that was, like, everywhere.
Easter brunch entails a lot of food, so I think that's pretty fitting.
It just kept coming. Anyway, all that to say, Meatloaf Monday. Here we are. I'm not sure I can have any meatloaf.
Nope, I don't know me either.
Hey, baby, I think I want cereal for dinner. That's where I am right now. All right, I'm in Dipper number 1. I'm calling it Simplify. No guests today because I wanted time to unpack some stuff with you, and always faithful. So I'm painting the image that, yes, we have been in a place for the last several years where I believe the military has become second fiddle, was treated second rate, although I believe the rank and file desperately wants leadership that will let them be what they are supposed to be. And I think we're going to also see there's going to be a winnowing of the ranks. I think you're already seeing people leaving or being asked to leave who don't understand the idea of meritocracy and the warrior ethos. But those are coming back, and those are forefront. Meritocracy and the warrior ethos. And I would say this, also leading the nation with an era or with an aura of gratitude for those who served. Classic example. I've got a piece here I pulled off of Yellowhammer News today. It was a op-ed written by Tommy Tuberville, our U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville. And he points out, he says, one of the most shocking discoveries to date has been the corruption within the USAID under the Biden administration. He said, from research in Wuhan to transgender operas in Colombia and Sesame Street in Iraq, USAID was essentially a Democrat slush fund. And the extent of the waste at USAID has millions of Americans wondering, why has the government been wasting our taxpayer dollars instead of doing basic things like taking care of veterans? Okay. You see where we're all going here now. That led him, he said, along with Senator Mike Lee from Utah, to introduce the Veterans First Act. All right, so I love this. He says, our bill will take the funds that have been wasted at USAID and redirect them to make improvements to veterans' homes nationwide. I'm for this. He said the VA State Veterans Home Construction Grant Program is a partnership between the VA and the states to ensure our veterans have a safe place to call home. We have some great ones right here in Alabama. And so their bill would redirect $2 billion of former USAID. Think about the fact that they've canceled so many things and they found so much waste that they can just take a part of it and dedicate $2 billion to veterans. I mean, my gosh, the amount of money in USAID alone that was being just scandalously wasted is unbelievable. But yeah, I love this. I think this is part of saying thank you. They also, by the way, it's not just that one. He's been the sponsor of a thing called the Access Act, and the other one is the Ensuring Continuity in Veterans Health Act to streamline options for community care, and then several others regarding post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury and fraud reimbursement. It's needed. It's there. And I'm telling you, that to me is an indication that we're in a different place. You would have never heard anything under the Biden administration where they would have said, we just don't need to do climate change today. We just don't need to fund DEI efforts in third world countries. I'm sorry, but we just need to cancel the money the millions that we're sending to that, transgender opera in Ireland and give it to veterans. What a new day. All right, that being said, let's talk about a few other things in that vein. Because right now, this change that we're seeing, I mean, there's anecdotal, and then there's also, I would say, there's actual data. Like, for instance, I pulled this one off Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes, Dateline last week, I think last Tuesday, a formation of 71 future service members stood and took their oath of enlistment in front of thousands of baseball fans during the Seattle Mariners Salute to the Armed Forces Night at T-Mobile Park in Seattle. That's cool. You got literally 71 kids who came out there and stood there, wearing their jeans and high school jackets and everything else, and raised their right hand and swore their oath of enlistment. Commanding officer of the Navy Talent Acquisition Group Pacific Northwest, U.S. Navy Commander Richard Jarko, he administered the oath of enlistment. So when's the last time you heard about something like that? 71 kids at one time at a ballpark.
Probably about 4 years ago.
Fair.
Yeah.
That being said, that's an anecdote, but it's matched by numbers. News Nation, Dateline February of this year, I think it's February 15th. The U.S. Army announced a record-breaking recruitment, marking its most productive December in over a decade. So past December, there's nothing reported in February, but they had the data for year end. The December was a significant turnaround. You remember recruiting has been at epic lows. We had 40-year lows in recruiting over the past few years of the Biden administration. We were literally at the smallest military since pre-World War II. Can you imagine? The smallest U.S. military since pre-World War II. We could not meet mission on recruiting. So we had to do a variety of things. First thing they did was they lowered the standard. They said, okay, we're going to let people in who don't have their GED yet. We're going to change the standards on drug use, and then we're also going to, by the way, we're going to waive the idea of whether you have neck and face tattoos. I mean, it was like, okay, all the things we said were bad are now good. And then what else can we do? What else can we do? Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's say that instead of having to recruit 60,000 just for the Army, it's only got to be 40. Yay! Nothing like moving the goalpost to help you meet your mission. Still didn't make mission. Still didn't make it. Now we're saying, officials now say that December 2024 was their best December in 15 years. Right after Trump won the election, shabam! Recruiting went through the roof. Now, liberals and Democrats are trying to say, no, it was stuff that we did that put things in place for Trump to take advantage. Shut up. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely asinine. That is your wishful thinking. Because the truth of the matter is, Trump got elected, announced a new day and who was going to be in his cabinet and what the mission was going to be like to be in the military. And oh, by the way, bam, recruiting went through the roof. They said that in December of 2024, in the Army alone, nearly 350 enlistments every day in that 1 month. In that 1 month. Army recruiters shared on X that they were seeing year-end numbers that were way above where they'd been. The Army is riding high, and in fact, I think, if not mistaken, by the end of February, they had seen almost half of their entire annual goal being met. So that counts because fiscal year, that'd be November, December, January. They were 1 quarter into the fiscal year. They had already met half their mission. So, whoo, they're loving life now. Air Force sees historic recruitment surge with their delayed entry program. Dateline March 6th. Defense News. Air Force seeing a historic surge in recruits in its delayed entry program as the service works to further boost recruitment of new airmen and guardians. We are watching right now. Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin announced in March the Air Force had accumulated 13,000 recruits, the most in nearly 10 years. Army's at a 15-year high. Air Force is at a 10-year high. I mean, it just keeps going. And you look at this and go, wow, how can this be? Maybe it's because we're changing the way things run. Like, I don't know, how about accountability? That's a huge one. So when I get back from this break, I'm going to tell you, I've got 2 articles here that clearly indicate for me that what we're about right now in the military, what we're about right now in this era, what I would say is simplify more so than ever, is we're looking at even accountability for the highest in ranks. I'm talking about officers and enlisted. Like meritocracy, it means accountability too. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. All right, so I'm talking about Semper Fi. I'm talking about the U.S. military. I'm talking about an attitude in which our military is honored and built on the ideas of meritocracy and the warrior ethos and of taking care of our troops. Yellow Dog Mike's having nothing to do with it. Yellow Dog Mike's all about, hating Hegseth, and Yellow Dog is just determined that, we're basically all, his closing line on this diatribe is not even worth reading the whole thing. Seriously, what is wrong with you people? Yellow Dog, there's more of us than there are of you, dude. Brian from Decatur says, have you heard of anyone being charged with a crime with all this fraud that's being found anywhere? Not yet. Stand by. Tom, by the way, that does not happen overnight, Brian. I think I need to say that's a change of subject. That's really not what I'm talking about right now, but I will say this. Those of y'all looking for heads to roll have to understand that you just don't indict someone in the public square. You have to, in a course of a fraud investigation, you have to first uncover the fraud. Then you have to link things accordingly with the fraud. And then you have to indict, which may involve grand jury proceedings first, and then you have to allow for representation, and you don't do that willy-nilly. So anyway, just saying, it's too soon, I think, for that to be coming on. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville says, I agree that things are looking up. I still couldn't in clear conscience recommend joining the military to my children. I could, Tom, I do. In fact, I'll be honest with you, my money's where my mouth is because mine are. But I'm of the belief that there's probably been no better time to jump in. I'll tell you more about that here momentarily. Junebug from Hartselle saying, I passed by a young man last week who was wearing a profoundly starched Marine uniform. I told him he looked so nice in his uniform that I was sure his mom was very proud of him. He smiled the biggest smile, told me she certainly is proud of him, and I thanked him for his service, and he genuinely thanked me for being supportive of him and the military. And then John from Lexington corrected me on my dates. He says recruiting is 1 October through 30 September, not 31 October. Okay, thanks. I was 30 days off. They're still doing good. Here's my thing about, by the way, tell my caller that I may get to them. It's going to be close to the edge of the time. Here's my thing. The era that we're in, meritocracy is not just about who did a good job. Meritocracy is also about accountability. So a couple of examples of accountability. It's happening a lot lately. You may have seen, but there have been top-level brass, enlisted and officers, who have been asked to resign or told that their services are no longer needed. For instance, Defense News has a piece that came out last Friday. Former Pentagon spokesman John Ulyat was asked to resign this week following a contentious start for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. All right, so I want to point something out. It's amazing when you see the lopping off of heads who served under the Biden administration. It's far more amazing, and it's very telling when you realize these are their people. This is someone who is part of Hegseth's own team, who has now been placed on administrative leave. And this relates to the signal communications that were such a problem about, a month ago? So Ulyat was one of Hegseth's initial communications office hires, oversaw some of the most highly visible but controversial moves, including a broad edict into military services to strip away online images that were considered to be part of DEI. And Ulyat has now been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. The investigation is not for wrongdoing. It's a meritocracy thing, but it's also an accountability thing. That's one of their own guys. When you consider that their accountability is not just for the previous administration's people, but it's also for their own, I think that is very telling. And here's another one. It's not just for the officers. It's for the enlisted too. The AFSOC command chief has been relieved amid investigation. So Air Force Special Operations Command's top enlisted airman, he's the chief master sergeant for Air Force Special Operations, was relieved by the AFSOC commander, Lieutenant General Mike Conley. Conley said that there was a, quote, loss of confidence in his ability to fulfill duties. What that basically is saying is something bad happened, and they're not going to label what it is, and the generic statement is a lack of ability to fulfill his duties, or loss of confidence. That's a senior level airman That's a person right there who was in line to potentially be one of the senior enlisted for the entire U.S. military, certainly the Air Force, who has just probably lost his career over something because accountability is back in vogue. And that's huge. And I think that's part of the Semper Fi, you guys. I do. I think it is. I think it absolutely is a part of the always faithful attitude that what we're seeing right now is we will build a military that is filled with meritocracy, that includes accountability, that, oh, by the way, has a warrior ethos, and that we care for them and we provide what they need as best we can. I got a quick call. I'll take it before the break. I got about a minute and a half. Matt from Madison. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, Phil. Just real quick, I've noticed in my life that organizations usually reflect the leadership, and I think that Hextep gets all this attention because they're scared to death of him.
Yeah.
In the short time he's been there, he's already changed the atmosphere, the outlook, and people want a leader that's fierce and will stand up for him, and they've got that Hextep, and Democrats don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, he's very out front. He's out there. He's out running with the troops. He's going where the troops are, and he speaks the troops' language. And I think that also freaks them out.
That's why they keep coming after him. They don't come after you if you're doing nothing. But I'm just saying, by the way they're coming after him, I think they're scared to death of him.
I think you're right, Matt. Good call. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Listen, we're gonna take a break right now. We'll take a break and come back for another dipper. But you send me your thoughts if you want to. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. What do you think? Are we seeing a change in tone regarding our military and our veterans? Is the left ever going to let us just run the show and do things? No, probably not. But are we more in line now with the ideas of meritocracy with accountability? Are we more in line now with the idea of a warrior ethos? And are we more in line now with the idea of caring for our veterans than we were before? You tell me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 833-687-4448. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming up next, some deportation jackassery. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what is now called once again Fort Benning. And then, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Hey, listen, I gotta wrap my comments real quick because literally right as I'm coming back on the air, a tweet just popped in from Dakota Meyer, the Medal of Honor winner I told you who just re-enlisted, and it's pretty interesting. So I'm gonna conclude my last dipper with the way I started it, and that was the re-enlistment of Sergeant Dakota Meyer, U.S. Marine Medal of Honor winner. He says, last week I had the honor to re-enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps and serve my country again. The biggest question has been why. The answer is this, he said, because I love this country with every moral fiber of my being and I have more to give. I don't expect everyone to understand it, but I do know some will. He said there hadn't been a single day in the last 15 years where I didn't wake up wanting to serve again. I believe once you've been in the fight, you just don't walk away from it. You might hang up the uniform, but the desire to serve inside of you doesn't go away. Now I get to step back in, not to start over, but to finish what I started. To my fellow Marines, he says, to my brothers and sisters in service, to anyone out there still willing to believe in something greater than themselves, I'm truly honored to stand by you again. That's a great way to end Semper Fi. All right. Thank you, Sergeant Meyer. We appreciate you. All right. Tell you what, let's jump on in here. I fully expect the sound effect to get worn out with this one. We're going to be talking about some deportation jackassery. You know, I haven't had the opportunity to use that sound effect much in the last few months, have I? Which is refreshing in a way.
Yeah, but whenever we have it is in regards to something the left's doing in response to Trump's winning.
And these are typically official actions or things that have been discovered in the course of dealing with official actions. Deportation of Jackassery. So, all right. Let me get some words out. First of all, I gotta touch on the back. So deportation. First of all, listen. Charlene and I were talking about this. I'm trying to think how she phrased it, but she said, I think you need to acknowledge that the greater part of Americans are frustrated with the way things are going, and that's fair. I agree with that. I think she's right. She nailed it. That we're absolutely frustrated because we voted for something to happen, and then now we're being told that what we know can happen and should be allowed to happen is not able to happen. Why is that? Well, liberals hate it when conservatives do anything. And I want to remind you that there was zero due process required for these vast millions of illegals to stream into our country. Zero due process required. Come one, come all. In fact, we'll even give some of y'all the plane tickets. And then, oh, by the way, we'll even make it easier. And then, oh, by the way, we won't stop you at the border. We'll just let you come in, and then we'll even give you a bus ticket and take you where you want to go. Where would you like to stay? And then some of the states and cities around the nation are giving free stuff and just going bankrupt just to take care of people who've never been here to contribute to the system whatsoever. It's maddening. Meanwhile, you got veterans' homes that are crumbling. That being said, the amount of calls for due process for one man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I'm almost sick of talking about him, but it's all the Dems can talk about, and since they're still on it, I guess I'll continue too. I got a piece in the Daily Wire. Senator Chris Van Hollen, he's the guy that went down there last week. Senator Chris Van Hollen, if this isn't jackassery, I don't know what is, but Senator Chris Van Hollen, I saw you reach for the button. Just brace yourself. He is now admitting, by the way, Daily Wire has the piece, Dateline yesterday. He is now admitting that he did not even ask the question of Kilmar Abrego Garcia as to whether he was an MS-13 member. Didn't bother. Didn't matter. The Democrat who contends that Abrego Garcia is his constituent from the state of Maryland said that what he did find out, though, was that Abrego Garcia is sad and traumatized. I got news. Being picked up out of your element and shipped off to your home country you didn't want to be in, probably having your head shaved and stuck in a prison full of other gang members, I'm sure it's traumatizing. I don't care a rat's hind end whether he's sad. But I get it. Sure. I'm sure that is. But you know what, though? He was here illegally, and that he admits. He was on an ICE detainer in 2019, and that he admits. His wife filed for protection from abuse orders with affidavits saying that he beat her in 2021, I think it was. That is on record. That means that's an admission. He also was stopped while on the ICE detainer. Despite the fact that he lived in Maryland, he had a car with 7 other illegals in it, none of whom had ID, none of whom had luggage, and all of whom claimed to be using the same address, traveling through Tennessee. They were detained on the notion that there was human trafficking involved and then released to the FBI, who then, under the Biden administration, who promptly dismissed the charges and let it go. This guy should have already been gone.
And has MS-13 tattoos.
And he's got hands full of MS-13. He's got probably a body full of him, but he's got them all across his knuckles. Anyway. So after Van Hollen met with Abrego Garcia, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele posted photos of the encounter. One photo showing the tattoos on his knuckles, and then the tattoos, by the way, are on one knuckle is a cannabis leaf, another a smiley face, then a cross, and then a skull tattooed across his knuckles. Those are allegedly MS-13 tattoos. I don't know. Here's what I do know. He fit the profile for the deportation order under the Alien Enemies Act. And that's where we sit. The Trump administration said that, the Supreme Court of the United States did say that these deportations could happen. And then I'll tell you about an update on that just over the weekend. But listen, this Dem senator going down there has been like all the rage. Why? It's because they finally got something they think they can sink their teeth into. We found a thing, one thing, and we think this is wrong, and so that's all they're going to talk about. Did I see that more have gone down there?
Yeah, I was just about to say, so that actually encouraged 4 representatives to go down there.
4 members of Congress. Let me guess, all Democrats.
Yep, and they landed yesterday. Representative Robert Garcia of California, Maxwell Frost of Florida, Yasamin Ansari of Arizona, and then Maxine Dexter of Oregon all landed yesterday to go down there, demanding to meet Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Has there ever been a time outside of war when the Red Cross intervenes? Has there ever been a time when we've seen these exodus of politicians to a foreign country to demand access to someone in the foreign country's prisons that is not an American citizen?
Nope, I don't think so. And it's funny because, like you said, he's not an American citizen. I wish they would show this amount of fervor with their own citizens that are actually American citizens.
The Biden administration left Americans in Afghanistan when they pulled out in 21. The Biden administration left Americans in Russian custody and didn't bother to try and negotiate for their release. The Biden administration has left Americans all over the place.
Yeah.
And yet this one man, Abrego Garcia, oh no, we need to run to El Salvador. He feels sad and traumatized. This is nuts, man. This is Jackassery, by the way.
Yes, major Jackassery. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw, but Van Hollen made a claim that the drinks at the table were planted there.
Some are calling this Margarita Gate.
Yeah, Margarita Gate.
So if you didn't see it, there's 2 versions of the picture when Garcia looks lovingly. When Van Hollen looks lovingly at Garcia. In fact, I think it was Charlie Kirk said, "Find someone who loves you and looks at you the way Van Hollen looks at Garcia." But the bottom line is there's 2 pictures. The one has been released by the Van Hollen camp. And it has them sitting there with a couple of water glasses on a table at a nice restaurant. And they've got, there's Abrego Garcia looking earnestly at the senator who's reaching across the table like he's got something just deep to say. Then there's the other picture that was released by the President Bukele's administration that shows them sitting at the same table. And oh, by the way, there's empty margarita glasses with salt on the rim and cherries sitting there on the table like they had a liquid lunch. Got a little sauced.
Yeah.
Hey, I know there's not much for you there in the prison. How about we have a few and tie one on before you go back?
It was like a weird date.
It was a weird date. Okay. But there's still things happening. So this absolute mania on the left to impose its will on the idea of stopping mass migration. Keep in mind, it's not working entirely because the border numbers are at epic lows. Like, we haven't seen numbers this low in like maybe in my lifetime. We're looking at decades-old records being set right now. But when you look at it, you think, okay, but there's more. Because, yeah, we're stopping them from coming in. That's huge. That's triage. That's stopping the bleeding. Stopping the bleeding is important, but when you deal with the wounded person, you still have to not only stop the bleeding, but then treat the wound. So stopping the bleeding is getting the border secure. That's happening, and that's happening quite well. And the Dems can't say boo about it right now. And I'll tell you what, they have thought of some innovative ways to do this, and they are making it happen. And the border is for the most part shut down right now. It's amazing what can happen when leadership actually says, we can do this. But then you look at the other side of the story. The other side of the story is the triage, not just the triage that stops the bleeding, but now caring for the wound. And that's getting the millions of illegals back out of our country who shouldn't be here in the first place, who have no real claim to be here except they just felt like it. And saying I feel like coming there is not the same as saying I'm allowed to be there. They're not here on work visas. They're not here on student visas. They didn't immigrate to the United States. They didn't marry an American abroad. None of it. They just stepped across the border, swam the Rio Grande, climbed the mountain near San Diego. They just did whatever it took to get here and streamed across in tunnels and everything else. And now they're here. Now we got to fix the wound. We have stopped the bleeding, but now we got to fix the wound. And the left is determined that we should not be allowed to do that. And the American public is just about had it with this. And I think the Democrats better start reading the room, or there's going to be some serious primaries of some Democrats who are going to find that their otherwise blue safe seats are going to be up for grabs. When we come back, I got to tell you about some of the crazy stuff that's happening because the deportation jackassery, y'all, it's everywhere. It's not just in D.C. It's not just Senator Chris Van Hollen. Good Lord. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Like making common sense like a superpower. All right, so I'm in dipper number 2, which is really my biggest dipper for the day. It's the one that's got the most content and the most to talk about. Deportation Jackassery. Brother, you are quick on the trigger today. You got that thing that's like just on ready call right there, don't you?
I do.
Just hair trigger. All right. So I got some stuff that's going to apply to Alabama here in a moment too, just so you know. You can see it right here in our home states, our listening area. But crazy stuff still happening. All right. We're not done with the problems that we've had, although I do believe the triage on stopping the bleeding at the southern border has been extremely beneficial. But there's still stuff happening. Like this. Pulled this off a red state. Dateline Saturday. Says last month, I don't know when last month, it doesn't say, but last month in Fremont County, Colorado, which is a mostly rural county, kind of southwest of Colorado Springs, if you know the state. 2 Fremont County police officers noted a van was passing by without dimming its headlights, and it had a broken tail light or something. They decided to do a traffic stop. And what they found in the van was an eye-opener. They had 2 Mexican nationals who were here on non-immigrant visas, which means they're not here to stay. They're here to come and go on some kind of business, carrying 180,000 rounds of 30 caliber and 7.62 millimeter rifle ammunition. 180,000 rounds. Y'all. I mean, good Lord. I tell you what, do some math for me. I should have done this during the break, if you wouldn't mind. A basic combat load for a soldier, I believe, is, let's see, hang on a second, 8 magazines. Do 8 times, excuse us while we do some math. Do 8 times 30. You come to, where are you?
240.
240 rounds. I think 240 rounds is a basic combat load. All right, some of y'all out there are going to correct me. I know you will. All right, do 240 times 48, which is the average size of an infantry platoon.
11,520.
All right, and then divide 180,000 by 11,400 and see what you get.
108,000 by 11,400. That is 15.7894737.
I don't know what you just said to me.
15.
The bottom line is we can outfit 15 platoons is what it sounds like.
Yep.
That's you've got a battalion or more worth of ammunition for a basic combat load. 180,000. Okay, all right, why am I saying all this? Because it's freaking weird, that's why. You got 150 boxes of 308. You got 30 boxes of 7.62. Each box was carrying 1,000 rounds. Y'all, this is a ton of ammo. And they also point out, ain't nobody stops at a firearms and ammunition store and casually purchases 180,000 of ammunition. There's something else going on here. That's right, there is. 2 Mexican nationals. You know what? Drug cartels. That's what. You look at it and you either had something that was happening that was criminal in nature or was related to cartel wars back home. Either way, it's bad. And they probably had to arrange to go around to different places to pick it all up. And it was probably prearranged. I just wonder how they thought they were going to get across the border with it. Surely they're going to break it down and take it in parcel and you know, who knows? All I know is this. Weird stuff is still happening. That was 2 Mexican nationals that were here in some status or another doing things. But the jackassery still surrounding all of this. It extends even to our own state. Now, by the way, the Biden administration, I'm pretty sure they would have seen that and called it international trade or commerce and applauded them for buying 180,000 rounds and extolled the ideas of whether it was American-made. Great. But how about 1819 News has a story about one of our most liberal mayors, Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed. Ah, gee. You'll be proud to know that the mayor of your capital city in Alabama was on Politics Nation with Al Sharpton this weekend. I hold in what?
The second Alabama mayor to go on Al Sharpton without recently.
Yes. The second liberal mayor to go on. Yes. I don't see Tommy Battle. I don't see Sandy Stimson. I don't see, any. I don't see Tony Kennon down in Orange Beach. I don't see any of the, the conservative mayors going on Al Sharpton. Funny how that works.
It is funny how that works.
So I hold in my calloused former paratrooper hands a piece from 1819 News. When I get back from the break, I'm going to tell you what your liberal mayor said about whether or not Montgomery, Alabama is a sanctuary city. Because y'all, deportation jackassery, it exists even right here in the red states. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, just plain right. Welcome to hour number 3 on a Meatloaf Monday. It's the day after Easter. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. And I'm in the middle of talking about what we label as, it's part, by the way, if you're new to Rightside, if perhaps you are on our Auburn station, for instance, or maybe even Chattanooga, and you're not used to some of the lexicon of the show, let me just tell you, we got our own vocabulary. Our peeps are called Rightside Ruffians. We talk about things like Jackassery, which has a sound effect. We talk about things like Jackassery, which is a true word that's labeled as the government run by the least competent of its citizens. We have all kinds of words in the vocabulary around here. Anyway, Jackassery, yeah, when you couple that with, Jackassery is typically, for us on this show, is defined as, official action or statements that really make no sense, and they're so filled up with leftist wokeness that you look at it and go, well, that's just the biggest batch of Jackassery I've ever heard. And now we have to deal with it. I'm talking about deportation Jackassery right now. So I hold in my... You tried to hit the button.
I didn't want to cut you off. Sorry.
I hold in my former calloused paratrooper hands an article from 1819 News. Stephen Reed is the mayor of Montgomery, the capital city of Alabama. Stephen Reed is one of the most liberal mayors in the Southeast, perhaps the nation, which is saying a lot. But you may be curious to know that Stephen Reed found time to go on Al Sharpton's TV show the other day and talk about why it's hard to be a black mayor, especially in this time of deportation. Why that has anything to do with each other, I have no idea. The article points out, Alabama, we did pass, when I was in the legislature, by the way, I was part of this, we passed a law banning sanctuary cities back in 2011. Proud to do it. Proud to do it. I hang my hat on it. Give me some applause. Can I have some applause? Thank you very much. Alabama, I was there in the state Senate. We passed a law banning sanctuary cities. However, we have some cities like Birmingham that decided to try and subvert the process by declaring themselves to be welcoming cities. We're not sanctuary cities. We're just welcoming cities. That, by the way, is Jackassery. Thank you very much. We're just full of sound effects now. So the state's progressive mayors here in Alabama, according to 1819, have expressed opposition to Trump's immigration initiatives, and the state is currently trying to bolster the ability of state and local police to assist in immigration enforcement. All right, that's an extension of what we did in 2011 is now being brought to bear in new legislation sponsored by our friend, State Representative Ernie Yarbrough, who was on the show last week to talk about it. It's called the Lake and Riley Act in Alabama. Alabama's Lake and Riley Act, and it does allow for collaborative effort between state and local law enforcement with immigration enforcement authorities that not normally is not normally there. Liberal Mayor Stephen Reed of Montgomery told Al Sharpton he believed that Trump's immigration policies, though, are targeting black mayors specifically. What information does he have? Pray tell. Show me the executive order that says, by the way, make sure you enforce this differently against black mayors. That's just absolute jackassery. So, oh my gosh. Okay. So Mayor Reed gave a very non-specific analysis. Here's one of his quotes. He said, "It certainly seems there's a much greater spotlight on black mayors across the country. And we know that from history, black mayors being elected in major cities, the scrutiny is always greater for us." Shut up. That is not true. This is the 21st century, man. Own it and walk in it. All right? Listen, when's the last time you saw Clarence Thomas stand up and go, "It's hard being a black justice"? He's not. You know why? Because he is walking in the authority God gave him. So anyway, he goes on to say, the scrutiny is always greater for us. I think when it comes to immigration, we stand ready to defend our residents. Okay, did you notice by the way that what he just said there was the legal citizens of Montgomery are less important than the illegal citizens of Montgomery? And I should say residents, not citizens. The mayor of the capital city of the state of Alabama, which has laws on the books that ban sanctuary cities, just said that we stand ready to assist or defend, our residents. What does that mean? What he's saying there, hidden language, read between the lines. The mayor of Montgomery believes it's more important for him as the mayor to care for those who are in fear of being deported, because that's their fight right now. Their fight is not for you and I. Their fight is not for the legal citizens of this nation. Their fight is not for law and order. Their fight is to make sure that every illegal who is here has the chance to stay here, period, regardless. And then he went on to say this. He said, I think when the threat is out there that they can be deported or someone can be taken off the street, it leads to a breakdown in the type of government and the type of response we all want to provide for our residents and those that are citizens of this country and those who are legal and those who are trying to obtain legal status. What does that have to do with anything? There is no one looking at the legal citizens of this nation saying, yeah, I think we're going to send you off to El Salvador. Yeah, I just feel like, that's enough of you. You're going to Gitmo. That's not happening. That's not going to happen. You know why? Because Abrego Garcia was taken up under the auspices of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. He was deemed to be a threat to society because of his affiliation with what has been branded a terrorist organization, MS-13, along with Tren de Aragua, along with several of the drug cartels, along with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They have been branded as non-state terror entities and therefore subject to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And the mayor of Montgomery doesn't know what to do with that because he is wallowing right now in deportation jackassery. I got other pieces here. Like here's a big old batch of it. When you look at things, I'm just going to skim by these stories. Red State has an article that came out Saturday about a New Mexico judge. A New Mexico judge who had to resign after the Department of Homeland Security found that he had a Tren de Aragua member living at his house. He's a judge. He's a judge. And oh, by the way, the reason why they found out is because he and his family were at the gun range with this illegal alien Tren de Aragua guy, having big time with firearms. So
wow.
Yeah. Then you got Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs. According to LifeSet, Dateline today, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has now vetoed a Senate bill which would have required state and local law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration. So this is their version of exactly what Alabama is in the process of doing. Alabama is hopefully about to do final passage of the Lake and Riley Act here in Alabama that puts state and local in the ability to coordinate direct on immigration enforcement. Arizona passed the bill and she vetoed it. The Republican-backed bill passed through the Arizona legislature where the GOP has a 2/3 majority in both chambers. The veto sets up the potential for a legislative override, which would require support from the same 2/3 majority. I think they will. I think they'll override it and put it into law over her veto. But that's happening because that's Katie Hobbs, and she's all about the deportation jackassery. But one more big piece of deportation jackassery that you and I are having to deal with. So I'll be honest with you, this is going to be a mixed bag of discussion here. I do not like this Real ID. It ticks me off. I don't know about y'all, but the idea that I have to get a little star put on my driver's license so I'm allowed to fly in my own country kind of pisses me off. I am a U.S. citizen. I had 30 years of military service. I went to war twice. I had a top secret security clearance. I still carry a military retirement card. I have been a citizen all my life, and now to be allowed to travel in my own country, I have to go and do more to prove my citizenship than any illegal alien has had to do for years. Illegals come here and do whatever they want, and they run through a black market economy, and they send their money home, and we all do all the things to jump through hoops to be allowed to get on a plane just to fly from one part of our own country to another. And I'll be honest with you, that really chaps the libertarian side of me. That feels like big government. Here's the interesting thing. It was passed, the Real ID Act was actually passed in 2005 in the wake of 9/11. It was passed in 2005 and has not been enforced up until now. Why? Well, in part because of people like me in Congress who were saying, this is wrong. And others in Congress who are saying, we don't want to do this because, it might mess with illegal aliens. It's been a balancing act. Here's the thing. Fox News has a piece that came out today. And to me, this is a batch of deportation jackassery. Thank you very much. You are warning all the points today. Americans are going to have to obtain their real ID. The Trump administration is intent on enforcing it. We have to do this by May 7th. I haven't done it yet. It pisses me off. But here's the thing. Only a legal U.S. citizen or resident can obtain the Star ID. What they're saying is this is the way they're going to enforce the ability for illegals to not be able to travel around the country freely. This is something that is going to be able to help set aside whether or not we have an illegal with a driver's license in our midst. I shouldn't have to go and get special ID just because millions were allowed in during the Biden administration. But that's where we're headed right now, and it ticks me off. The move to enforce real IDs at the national level for domestic air travel, says Fox News, comes after 19 states and Washington, D.C. all put laws on the books that allow illegal immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Right now, a driver's license is all that is necessary to get on a plane, to buy a ticket and get on a plane, to fly domestically. That's about to change. So you got states like California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, and Washington, D.C., all giving illegals photo ID driver's licenses. The Trump administration is now saying it's in a position where it's going to have to enforce the Real ID Act and not delay it any further unless Congress gets involved. It was revealed in a memo last week from the Department of Homeland Security that Real ID requirements will further crack down on illegal aliens, and that Real ID law is now going to be enforced in order to prevent those in the country illegally from flying from one part to the other unless they are looking to self-deport on an international flight. Still, that's just maddening. That is just absolutely deportation jackassery. And I now have to go to extreme lengths to take time away from work and find all the documentation necessary to take with me to go down there to prove what's always been known. And that, if I want to do business in Washington, D.C., or if I want to fly out to California, or if I want to take Charlene on a trip somewhere domestically, I have to have a special ID card that, show me your papers. That's where we are. I said before, and this bugs me too, I said before that I could see that the illegal immigration crisis that we went through is a part of what can bring about the mark of the beast. And I said it not so tongue-in-cheek. I said it as here's how we know if you're really supposed to be here. You'll have this chip under your skin, and it'll take care of everything.
So now we have to pay for the government screw-up.
Enter the Real ID.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. When we get back from this break, I'll wrap this up. I'm going to tell you about what Justice Samuel Alito said about the Supreme Court not really working well with the Trump administration on the issue of deportation jackassery. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're finishing up Deportation, Jackassery. So one of the things that just happened over the weekend, and I believe that the press is way overplaying it. They're trying to say something happened that is bigger than what it is, but the fact that something happened at all is still irritating. So the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which is the thing that got this Abrego Garcia guy down to El Salvador, which got, hundreds of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua guys off the streets. Maybe thousands now that I've said that. A decision was rendered by the Supreme Court over the weekend. That's very rare. It was an emergency decision. It was a 7-2 decision, which is pretty solid. The only two who dissented from it were Justices Alito and Thomas. Justice Alito issued a scathing review of it. But the liberal media, like I said, is going to go all in. Here's the deal. What did they do? Well, they stopped the Trump administration from deporting a batch of Tren de Aragua members back to El Salvador, or down to El Salvador. Why? Because allegedly they were not given enough notice to be able to challenge their deportation. Interesting. So what we're finding right now is the Supreme Court issued a midnight stay of the deportation of Venezuelan criminals who were being held in a detention center in Texas, saying that in order to deport them, the Trump administration had to give them adequate notice and the ability to defend their status. How many of them will be able to defend it? How many of them will be able to actually stand up and go, I'm not here illegally, and those tattoos on my face are not saying MS-13, even though I know they do. Well, the decision was reached early Saturday morning. Justice Alito was livid. He wrote a dissent that was published, and he said, the court issued unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts even a chance to rule, without hearing from the opposing party, that's the Trump administration, within 8 hours of receiving the application, with dubious factual support, and without providing any explanation for the order. And he said, I refused to join the court's order because we had no good reason to think that under the circumstances, a midnight order was even necessary or appropriate. That is harsh words right there from a Supreme Court justice. The bottom line is this. They did not say Trump can't deport under the Alien Enemies Act. What they said is Trump has to allow for an opportunity for a hearing. So now what we're going to be looking at is potentially every one of these Tren de Aragua and MS-13 members. You better start self-deporting, or you're going to sit in Gitmo and rot until we can do a hearing and get you out of here. And I guarantee you, if you want a job right now as a hearing administrator or an immigration judge, raise your hand, because they're probably taking volunteers to expedite that process. All right, that's enough of that. I got a ton of text messages, 833-687-4448. Text it in, call it in, tell me what you think. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. Hey, all you right side ruffians out there, you are listening to Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Woo-hoo. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. And then straight up, I'm talking about big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in, just for good measure. A couple of text messages, and I'll jump to the phones. Fritzy from Huntsville. Fritzy says, Colonel, I feel you're disgust with the seemingly unfair requirements to move about freely as an American. I needed the new driver's license a few months ago. Had to get the star then. They don't offer the regular driver's license. Fritzy. He said, P.S. I thought D.C. was changed to Washington, D.A. I don't think so. Pete from Decatur says, why don't we take some of that so-called Doge dividend and instead of sending a check back to everyone, hire 10,000 new immigration judges and then give them all their hearings? I say we dispatch most of them within the year. Listen, I think that would be worthy, and the people of America would say, you know what? Just sign them up. Start swearing people in. Like, I'm an attorney right now. I'll do it by the billable hour. I'll just show up on the days when I'm there to. I mean, people do it as municipal judges all the time. A municipal court usually has an attorney who fills in as a municipal judge. There's no reason why we can't do this. There's a way to skin that cat. I like it. Jeremy from Moulton says the whole notion that these people can't be deported without ample notice is ridiculous. The notice that you could face deportation is implied when they illegally entered the country. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. That's actually a pretty ingenious thing. They had notice when they came here illegally because they came here illegally. They know deportation is always a possibility. Interesting.
It's almost like it's in the name illegal alien.
Interesting. Which we were not allowed to say for you.
No,
mean, you know what? I take it back. We said it all we wanted to.
Undocumented person.
That's right.
Or whatever.
David at Bucky says, Phil, if I'm not mistaken, you can use a valid U.S. passport or even a valid military ID card in lieu of a gold star driver's license. By the way, I got the star on my license years ago. Okay. Thanks, David. Let me go to the phones. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Going through Nashville, so you figure it out.
Well, are you going north through Nashville or south through Nashville?
Fortunately, I'm going north.
There you go. All right. That's better than south at this time of day.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, did you have a good Easter, man? How's everybody at the house?
Did real good. Had all the grandkids over, had about 200 eggs hidden and everything.
Wow.
Everybody got a bunch of eggs, and, well, fake eggs. I couldn't afford real eggs. I had them when I got along for that.
That'd be $1 million Easter egg hunt right there.
Oh my gosh! Have to have a Brinks truck come bring them.
I knew a guy who was a really prolific singer-songwriter, really good guy named Alan Levi. He wrote a song one time about finding an Easter egg like 4 months after Easter, still in the crook of a tree, and he wrote a song about it. You know, but anyway, yeah, that can mess up your yard.
Yeah, you don't want to touch that thing, that's for sure.
Hey, speaking of your yard, has the water receded? How's everything there? I know you were darn near flood stage, and it was right up to the edge of your buildings.
Oh yeah, it's already gone way down. Everything's back to almost full stage, and all I'm doing is cleaning up my mess.
Wow, good deal.
And there's a mess.
Did you inherit any boats? Did you pick up any good stuff that floated your way?
I had a picnic table float away, but the good one stayed. The one that was actually fit to keep.
Wow. Well, what do you think about all the stuff we're talking about today, man?
I think you'd be all right putting a star on your license as long as it was a Right Side Media star, wouldn't it?
Well, now that does beg the question of, can I have the Right Side star, which is our logo? But that's interesting. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Hey, I know a guy.
What happens if I make a little sticker that shows the star and I stick it on there, Right Side Media? Interesting.
There you go. It's got a star on there. You just say, well, hey, I heard I had to have a star on my license, so here it is.
I've got my business card with that logo on it. I'll just go ahead and say, this is all the cards you need. Thank you very much. And then they'll probably say, well, you can't get on the plane.
There you go. Well, unless you're illegal, then you'd be all right.
Well, what do you think about this, though? I mean, Real ID, and here we are. We're the ones who are doing everything right, and yet we're once again the guys who have to go out and do more to prove that we're the ones doing everything right.
Oh, under the last administration, there was always a second set of rules for we had to have passports and everything else to get on a plane. Illegal aliens didn't have to have anything on to get on. They was letting them on there with nothing, no information on them whatsoever. They could have been the biggest terrorists in the world and entered an airplane, and nobody batted an eye about that. But if you was American citizen, no, you can't get on now.
It's really pretty nuts. I mean, and I find it almost feels offensive to me, and that's part of my problem. And I'm probably stoking some flames by saying this, but that's the problem I have. Is I've been holding out on this thing, thinking surely someone's going to step in with some common sense and say, it's the good guys that shouldn't have to be doing this. It's the bad guys that need to do it. It's the bad guys who shouldn't be allowed on the plane because they don't have something that, like, just how about this? If you're here illegally and they give you an illegal immigrant driver's license, it doesn't work. But that's not where we are. We got to go get the Real ID.
Well, it could go under the of discrimination, because we've been told that blacks aren't capable of getting even an ID, let alone a real ID. So, I mean, it sounds kind of racist to me. So maybe we should fight it on those bases.
Well, liberal Mayor Stephen Reed, who's the mayor of Montgomery, he did say that he feels like that black mayors in the deportation environment have it harder. And why, I don't know, but that's what he says.
I'll be darned. Well, I think they need to have it harder. I think we need to start going after, Trump needs to go after all these sanctuary cities and everything, and start cutting this funding off until they realize that they can't, we're not going to go against the United States law in these little states and cities.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's not a matter of what color the mayor is. It's a matter of whether or not the politics are blue or red. That's what it boils down to. Are you a liberal mayor who is defying federal law, or are you a conservative mayor who's like all in? There's the difference. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, man.
And also, I got a problem with all these congressmen going down to Nicaragua, trying to enforce foreign policy. They're only congressmen here in the United States. They have no power overseas. So I think maybe the Logan Act should kick in on them. They're just private citizens going over there doing this stuff. And
I'm wondering, do those 4 that went down there today, have they gotten to see Mr. Garcia, or are they?
No,
okay.
no. So they landed yesterday, and I don't think if they do, it'll be a photo op, and that's it.
Are they going to get the same margarita treatment?
They probably learned from their lesson of they're going to make sure the table has nothing on it.
Yeah, who knows?
It'd be fun if the president of Nicaragua could find these people that find something in their law he could hold them for. That would be just great.
You have caused great offense to our country. We shall keep you for an extra day or 3. All right, man. Go. Be safe on the road, brother. We appreciate you.
Have a good one, Phil.
All right, take care, man. Yeah. I'm glad he's heading north at this point. He's had a couple of days he's called in recently where he was heading south still at this point. Let me get a few text messages, and I guess I'm going to wind up holding that third dipper on protecting kids to tomorrow, which is good because I have somebody I want to have on the show. Maybe I can get her on tomorrow. Dave from Capshaw says, okay, when he starts off his text by saying, no offense to anyone.
It's a good text. I read it.
Okay, good. Well, you go ahead and read it now. How about that?
He said, no offense to anyone at this time, but I'm seeing this quote a lot today. Said the man with a wall around his country and his own very well armed and well trained army to keep unwanted people out. Talking about the Pope. Said the quote said it's hypocrisy to call yourself a Christian and chase away a refugee or someone seeking help. Someone who is hungry or thirsty, toss out someone who is in need of my help. He said, if I say I'm a Christian but do these things, I'm a hypocrite. Said Pope Francis. I said, P.S. No one has done more for the hungry, thirsty, or needy worldwide than the people of the United States.
Okay, yeah, I do recall that. He was very, Pope was very liberal on the idea of illegal immigration.
He was very vocal to against President Trump's. And, you know, I hate doing this because, like, he just passed away today. And
he's the Pope.
But, I mean, what he said, Dave from Capshaw texted in is correct. I do hate the narrative of good Christians wouldn't do that in regards to, you know, good Christians shouldn't want, you know, MS-13 gang members in their nation and have to fear for their life. Like, you can't tell me that is a good Christian thing to do is let everyone in. That's not true.
And here's the thing. We never shut our doors to the world.
No.
We've never done that. Mm-mm. And never in the history of our country have we truly shut the doors of our nation to the outside world. But no nation can exist when you don't have control over your borders and understand who is here and why they're here.
Yeah.
And so we have a right to ask, and we have a right to control access. And then guess what? Apply for the process. And you can say it's backlogged all you want to. That doesn't mean there's not a process.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to take it from non-Christians to try to twist the Christianity into what they want it to be convenient. Like, I think the Christianity that they want it to be would be the Christianity that God tells David, you know, maybe you can go coexist with Goliath. Go see if you can just coexist. Don't be rude. Don't be mean. You know, it's just that. I'm tired of hearing it from people who aren't Christians trying to gaslight Christians into what they should think about it.
Don't beat around the bush, man. Tell me how you feel.
You know, I actually did a whole monologue on it when you were gone, so I have a certain feeling about it.
I did quite well, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, a couple more of these. Paul from Decatur says, I feel the same way on the Real ID star. He said, I have in the military. I was in the military since 1969, TS clearance, several conflicts, both above and below the tables, and ARCOM with a V device and more. Now I should have to prove my citizenship and loyalty to the country. He said, you can kiss my fourth point of contact. Obviously, you're a paratrooper too, Paul. But thank you very much for your service, and I appreciate you. And by the way, for those who don't know, that sounds like an ARCOM with V device meant valor in combat, and fourth point of contact means he was a paratrooper. Just saying. Matt from Madison says, amen on the Real ID. People think I'm crazy when I say things. Say the things you echo. You can use your passport in lieu of ID. There you go. Yellow Dog Mike from Huntsville, though, he's still all over. He's determined that, he said, your buddy Hegseth is going down. The courts are about to tie Trump's tail in a knot. Stand with Harvard. Resist. Fight back. There's not more of you than there are of us. That's why Bernie and AOC are rocking the crowds.
Jeez, I can't believe they're bringing out all those people in the bluest of the blue cities.
That's right. Goodness. Large crowds of liberals turn out in liberal cities.
Who would have thought?
Amazing. By the way, didn't he crash Coachella?
He did, yeah.
Sort of took advantage.
That's so lame.
It was. All right, listen, we're taking a break right now. We'll come right back and wrap the day. Yes, indeedy. It has been quite the day, and I got a few more text messages, and we'll put a capstone on the day. Head into a Meatloaf Monday evening. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. John from Lexington, South Carolina just texted in. He says, Phil, how do conservatives win in the courts when conservative judges are not activists, but strict constructionists, but liberals are activists and twist the law to their needs? I would say, and I hate to say it this way, but part of it's going to be you have to elect the people to either A, hold the bench, or B, appoint people to the bench who are conservative. And that's the truth, John. The reality, now listen, the Supreme Court has got to be controlled by conservatives. And I understand the rulings we got this weekend were were an issue. I do not think that Brett Kavanaugh has suddenly gone liberal. But what we got to make sure we do is like winning the presidency. We don't know what's going to happen with some of the liberal judges on the court. But the reason why we have a conservative court, the reason why Roe v. Wade was overturned, is because Trump had the ability to appoint two, Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. And that changed the entire dynamic. So the federal district court benches are all filled by appointments. Once they're there for life or good cause is what it says, which means until they die or retire or until something, generally speaking, criminal occurs in which they have to be removed. So the president is the one who appoints to the federal district court bench. And that's important too. And we got to make sure that we're putting people in the right position to either appoint or to be the ones who are on the courts. John from Huntsville's got the grades in. He says, Jeff from Indiana gets an A+ for his fantastic phone call. Phil gets an A+ for his spectacular performance. Today's winner, though, with a perfect A++, is obviously the sound effect king. He's looking pretty smug right now, too, by the way. The sound effect king, JP, because I'm pretty sure he just set a Guinness World Record for most sound effects in a single radio show. Congratulations. Hope you set another sound effect record tomorrow.
I think I did. I think the Jackassery sound effect was played 30 times during the show.
It was. The only thing missing would have been like if we'd done Doge or we had one of the other. What was the newest sound effect you had that cracked me up? Oh, the scream, the goat. That's
that one?
That's the one. Victor from Huntsville says, Phil, breaking. Army is changing the ACFT to the AFT, removing the standard power throw and making the new test gender neutral. Accountability. I'm digging it, Victor. Listen, if you're going to say it's equal for all, then guess what? It's equal standard. Jay from Hartselle, dating further back in the show, says, first of all, if Al Sharpton's inviting you on, you're not of any consequence. Okay. He said that guy has been irrelevant for most of his life. He's been trying to ride MLK's coattails for years, and he is no MLK. Tom, with all the kids in Huntsville, several things there. He said, I like Pete Hegseth, and I have family members serving, but I haven't volunteered to deploy for the last 3 years because I don't trust our leadership to do the right thing. And then he says, with regards to the ammo being found in those Mexican nationals van, he says, my buddy bought 25,000 rounds, I think is what he's saying, a 5.56 for a prairie dog hunt out west and got a visit from the FBI. I believe it. Thomas from Athens says, Colonel, I think you nailed it. These illegals entered into the U.S. because they just felt like it and wanted the government free stuff. Sounds like most Dems. They just do stuff because they feel like it, and they can get free government stuff and free stuff from other like-thinking Kool-Aid drinkers. So illegals fit right into the Democrat created chaos. There you go. Thomas, thanks very much. Marcus from Huntsville says, Dems have done more for a deported MS-13 gang member in the last month than the entire Biden administration did for the American hostages taken by Hamas for a year. Excellent point, sir. Excellent point.
But also, I think you mentioned this off air about Trump is he let them do this all they want because this is his best messaging point of getting rid of the people like Kilmore, Abrego, Garcia. So they're not only helping Trump by going and grandstanding and I'm going to go down to El Salvador, but it helps Trump and then makes them look even worse.
It's maddening, but you're right. And George Wallace, who's the very controversial former governor of Alabama, he once said, as long as they're spelling your name right, it's still good PR no matter what they say.
Yeah, and I think they're just digging their own grave with this because this is like an 80-20 issue with Americans.
I wouldn't be surprised if we suddenly found a smoking gun where Mr. Garcia was smack dab in the middle of some stuff that they don't want talked about.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the stuff with his wife, and then the hand tattoos. Which, by the way, his wife is putting emojis over his hand in every picture that's up on her social media, trying to hide the tattoos.
Paul from Huntsville checked in and said that remember that Biden traded an arms dealer for Brittany Griner. They don't abandon everyone, no doubt. All right, listen, you guys, amazing day, and I do believe there are more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.